Imagine you have a bucket, just a standard plastic bucket, and you fill it with water.
Okay.
Now, in a perfect universe, the kind that you see in physics textbooks, that bucket is a closed system.
Right. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out.
Exactly. Unless you physically tip it over, that water stays there.
Yeah.
But we don't live in a physics textbook. We live in the financial world. And in the financial world, that bucket is, well, it's weird.
It's definitely not a closed system. It's fundamentally leaky.
It's so leaky. It's more like a bucket made of, I don't know, mesh. Or a bucket that sometimes, for no clear reason, just decides to, like, evaporate 2% of its contents because it happens to be a Tuesday.
Or because the currency exchange rate in London shifted overnight while you were sleeping.
Yes. We're talking about this phenomenon of money just sort of disappearing. And I don't mean you made a bad investment or, someone hacked your account.
No, this is much more subtle.
It's the slow, grinding, almost invisible friction of the system itself. We call it drift. It's the money that gets lost in that gap between when you swipe your credit card and when the bank actually settles the ledger.
It's the rounding error in a spreadsheet that nobody catches for 6 months until the audit. It's all these tiny little paper cuts.
And they add up. The paper we're looking at today calls it financial entropy, which is a great term. It's this natural tendency of organized wealth to just degrade into disorganized noise over time.
It's a perfect analogy to thermodynamics. Order decays into disorder.
And usually the solution to this is just more humans. We hire these huge armies of accountants and auditors and compliance officers to run around with like rolls and duct tape.
Patching the leaks.
Patching the leaks after they've already happened. But today we're doing a deep dive into a source that says, put down the duct tape. The bucket is fundamentally broken. We need to build a Tesseract.
And that source is a white paper titled The Tesseract, a closed economic manifold where wealth cannot decay. And I have to be honest, when I first saw that title, I thought it was going to be, another incredibly dry technical manual about accounting standards.
I did too. I was fully prepared to skim this. My eyes were ready to glaze over.
But it's really not. It's actually a philosophy paper disguised as a computer science paper. It's proposing that we stop treating money like a list of numbers in some database.
Right.
And start treating it like a physical substance, a substance that has to obey the laws of geometry and thermodynamics.
The central claim here is massive. They aren't just saying, oh, we can reduce errors by 10%. They are saying they can create a system where losing money through error or drift is structurally, mathematically impossible.
Like laws of physics impossible.
Exactly. Impossible by its very nature, not just because a rulebook says so.
And that is the distinction we are really going to dig into today.
So here's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to try and unpack this Tesseract. We need to figure out how they're combining some pretty heavy legal theory, specifically something called Pister's law, with computational physics to create this so-called closed manifold.
Right.
And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to look at your own bank balance a little differently. You realize that the number you see on your screen it's basically just a polite suggestion.
Soft opinion, really, a well-educated guess.
So let's start with the why. Why do we even have this financial entropy? The paper kicks things off with a legal scholar named Katharina Pister. Now, I've heard the name, but break it down for us. What is Pister's law?
So Katharina Pister wrote this really landmark book. It's called The Code of Capital. And her central thesis just flips our entire understanding of wealth on its head. Most of us, we tend to think of capital as stuff.
Right. Physical things.
Yeah.
Land, factories, gold bars, machinery. If I own a factory, I have capital. That feels like a physical fact. I can go touch the brick wall.
But Pister would stop you right there. She would ask, do you own the factory? Or do you just have a piece of paper, a deed that says the police will stop someone else from using it?
Well, I mean, practically speaking, the paper is the ownership.
Yeah.
But that just feels like a technicality, The factory itself is the valuable thing.
Is it, though? Let's push on that a bit. Factories degrade. Roofs leak. Machines get old and rust. That's physical entropy.
Yeah.
But capital, the abstract wealth that's stored in that factory, that can last for centuries.
Right.
Or it can vanish in an instant. If the local government changes the zoning laws, your factory might suddenly be worthless.
Okay, right.
If you go bankrupt and you don't have what lawyers call priority rights, your creditors can come in and strip it bare. The stuff is still there, but the capital is gone.
I see where you go. And the stuff is just stuff. The wealth is actually the legal wrapper we put around the stuff.
Exactly. Pister's core argument is that capital is a legal construct. It is a code. It's a set of rules that gives an asset certain magical properties. Durability over time, priority in bankruptcy, convertibility into cash, and universality across jurisdictions.
So without that legal code, wealth just dissipates. It gets seized, it gets divided, it essentially just evaporates into thin air.
Precisely. The code of capital is like the force field that holds the bundle of value together.
Okay, so that's the theory. Now, what's the problem the Tesseract paper identifies with this?
The problem is that we have this incredibly sophisticated legal code, this force field, but we enforce it with what they call soft enforcement regimes.
Soft enforcement, that sounds weak. Like a parent counting to 3, but you know they're never actually going to do anything.
It's actually worse than that. It's enforcement that relies entirely on retrospection. It looks backwards.
What do you mean?
Think about how a simple financial transaction works today. Let's say you go and buy a coffee. We'll call that moment T dollars.
Okay, I swipe my card.
You swipe your card, the little machine beeps. You walk away with your coffee.
Transaction complete. I'm happy.
Physically, yes, but financially, not even close. That transaction has just entered what the paper calls the gap. It hasn't actually settled between the banks yet. That final settlement, let's call it $T $1, that might happen hours or even days later.
And what's happening in between T dollar and T dollar?
In that gap, we have a state the paper calls superposition.
Superposition. Okay, so you're not kidding about the physics analogies.
Not at all. The money is, in a sense, in two places at once. It's gone from your view of your account, but it hasn't actually arrived in the merchant's bank account yet. It's just in limbo.
And that limbo state is where the entropy attacks. That's where the drift happens.
That is precisely where it happens. Because there's a time lag, reality can create conflicting versions of the truth. You might accidentally spend that money again because a different system you use didn't update fast enough.
Or, like you said, a currency exchange rate might shift while the money is in flight, meaning $100 becomes $99.50.
Or a human at the bank makes a simple manual entry error, a typo.
Right. And how do we fix all this?
We fix it after it breaks. We do reconciliation. We do audits. We spend billions and billions of dollars looking backward at the mess we made in the gap and trying to clean it all up.
So going back to your bucket analogy at the start, we're basically using a bucket full of holes, and we just hire a bunch of people to mop the floor every single night and try to pour the spilled water back in.
And we pat ourselves on the back for being really efficient at mopping. The Tesseract paper looks at this and just says, this is insane. Stop mopping. Build a bucket that physically cannot leak in the first place.
Let's move from soft enforcement, which is human, delayed, infallible, to hard enforcement.
That's the goal.
Okay, let's talk about the villain of the piece here. The paper lists a few specific types of this economic entropy. We've mentioned drift, but there are others, and one that I found really relatable was allocation ambiguity.
Oh, this is a huge one for any business owner. Allocation ambiguity is when money moves between different conceptual categories without any hard physical barrier.
Give me an example.
Sure. Imagine you run a small startup. You have one business bank account. You've got $100,000 in it.
Feel pretty good about that.
You're feeling great. But let's say $20,000 of that is actually sales tax you've collected that you owe to the state next month. And another $30,000 is earmarked for payroll next week.
Okay.
But in the bank account, it's just one big number, $100,000. So it is physically possible for you, the owner, to go out and spend $90,000 on a big, flashy marketing campaign.
Because the bank doesn't know what the money is for. The bank just sees liquidity. It just sees a number.
Exactly. The constraint, the knowledge that part of that money is for taxes is in your head or maybe on a spreadsheet somewhere. It's not in the substrate of the money itself.
So you spend it. And then next month, you're in a world of hurt when the tax bill comes due.
That is entropy. It's the chaotic mixing of funds that should be separate, leading to a disordered, stressful state.
And then there's counterparty risk, which feels like the ultimate form of entropy, just relying on someone else not to screw up.
It is. We all rely on external ledgers, our banks, payment processors, clearinghouses. If their server goes down, or worse, if they become insolvent, your wealth suddenly becomes inaccessible.
Your reality is completely dependent on their reality being stable.
And that's a huge source of risk.
So the Tesseract paper proposes a solution. And it's not just, better software or a slicker app. It's something they call C MOS, the Compliance Managed Operating Substrate, which I have to say sounds like a component for a spaceship.
It does sound very sci-fi, doesn't it? But let's break down those words. Substrate, that implies the underlying layer, the foundation, the dirt the road is built on.
Okay. So it's not an app on top of the old system, it's a new system entirely. How does C MOS fix the leaky bucket?
I want to use a really specific analogy here to explain the fundamental difference between how our financial system works now and how CMOS is designed to work. Let's compare a parking violation to a video game wall.
Okay, I'm with you. A parking ticket versus Super Mario.
Exactly. In the current financial system, the rules are like parking signs. No parking from 9 to 5. Can you physically park your car there?
Physically, yes,
Yeah.
of course. But I'll probably get a ticket.
Right. You perform the action first, parking, and then later, some external authority, the police in this case, comes by, validates the state of the world, sees the violation, and applies a punishment.
So it's retrospective.
It's soft enforcement. The bad thing happened, and now we're trying to correct it after the fact.
Okay, now, the video game.
Now, think about Super Mario. You're running along in the game, and there's a solid brick wall in front of you. You push a controller to the right, trying to go through it. What happens?
Nothing. Mario just runs in place. He doesn't go through the wall.
Does the game let you walk through the wall and then pop up a message saying, hey, wait a minute, that's illegal, and pull you back?
No, of course not. The code doesn't define that coordinate transition as a possible move. It's just not a thing that can happen.
That is CMOS. It's what's called a deterministic state machine. It doesn't check for errors after the fact. It validates the requested transition before the state of the system is ever allowed to change.
So if I try to spend that tax money we were talking about earlier,
The system doesn't flag it for review. It doesn't send you a warning. It simply treats it like Mario hitting the wall. The button doesn't work. The transaction is rejected. It never exists in the first place.
so it's not don't be evil. It's literally can't be evil.
Exactly. And to achieve this, the paper outlines 3 core principles. The first one is atomic ordering.
This one sounded really technical. It mentions no race conditions. What does that mean in, plain English?
It means that time within the system is a single straight line. There's no ambiguity. In traditional banking, you can have 2 things happen at roughly the same time. That superposition state again, and it gets really confusing which one happened first.
Did the check I wrote clear before the paycheck deposit arrived?
Exactly. And the answer might depend on which bank you ask or what time of day they process their batches. And that confusion is where things like overdraft fees often come from.
Right.
In CMOS, every single event that happens is queued and given a unique sequential number. 1, 2, 3, 4. There is no meanwhile. There's only before and after. The timeline is absolute.
Okay, so time is sorted. What's the second principle?
The second is substrate validation, which is the Super Mario wall we just discussed. The rule check happens before the state is written.
And the third?
And the third is cryptographic witnessing.
Okay, so this is where the blockchain-like technology comes in.
It uses similar technology, yes, something called a Merkle tree. The idea is that every time Mario successfully jumps or every time he bumps into a wall, that event is cryptographically signed and time-stamped into a permanent, immutable log.
So you have a perfect, unchangeable history of exactly why every single dollar moved, or just as importantly, why it didn't move.
You have a mathematically provable audit trail of reality.
Okay, so let's recap. We have the philosophy. Pister says law creates capital. We have the physics, entropy destroys capital. And we have the mechanism.
Yeah.
CMOS stops entropy by acting like a video game wall.
That's a great summary.
Now I want to get into the actual architecture, the Tesseract itself, because the paper describes this shape, this closed economic manifold.
This is where the geometry gets really fascinating and I think really practical.
It sounds like we're about to step into the 4th dimension here.
Well, in mathematics, a manifold is just a space. Think of the surface of a sphere, like the Earth. A closed manifold is one that has no edges. If you walk in any direction on a sphere, you never fall off the side. You just keep going and eventually come back to where you started.
So the Tesseract is an economy with no edges. No cliffs where money can fall off.
That's the idea. No edges where wealth can fall off into the abyss of drift or ambiguity. The Tesseract architecture defines 6 specific surfaces, and the core rule is that every single cent you own must exist on exactly one of these surfaces at all times. It cannot be in between, it can't be floating in the void.
Okay, let's walk through these surfaces because this is where it gets real for anyone actually trying to run a business. Surface 1, the primary treasury, or T-dollars.
Think of this as your deep cold storage, your company's savings account on steroids. It is, by default, right protected. This is where your long-term reserves and investment capital live.
So you can't connect a debit card to this. You can't just pay for lunch from your primary treasury.
Absolutely not. It's designed for maximum safety and accumulation.
Okay, that makes sense. Then we have Surface 2, the operating treasury, or two $2 too.
This is your working capital. This is the spending surface. This is where you pay vendors, you pay payroll, you buy office supplies. It's the active day-to-day account. But even here, money doesn't just fly out randomly. It has to follow very strict rules about where it can go.
Now for Surface 3, this is the one that really caught my eye, the tax surface. The paper calls it a mirror accumulator. And I have to admit, when I first read that, it sounded a little scary.
A little ominous. Why is that?
It sounds like a prison for your money. Mirror accumulator. In my head, I'm picturing one of those funhouse mirrors, but instead of making me look tall and skinny, it just takes my money. It feels really restrictive.
I can see that, but it's actually designed to be the opposite of a prison. It's designed to be liberating.
How so?
Think about the immense mental load of a business owner today. You have a great first quarter, you make $1 million in revenue, you feel rich, you go out and buy fancy new office furniture, you hire an expensive consultant.
Standard operating procedure when you're growing.
Then the second quarter comes around. Your accountant calls you up and says, hey, remember that $1 million in revenue? Turns out you actually owe the IRS about $300,000 of that, but you've already spent it on the furniture.
And now I'm scrambling. I'm stressed out. I have to find that money somewhere, maybe take out a loan just to pay my taxes.
Right. That's stress, that scramble, that is entropy, that is disorder caused by a lack of real-time information.
So how does the mirror accumulator fix that?
In the Tesseract, the tax surface acts like a magnet. The very instant that a revenue event hits your operating surface, T2.2, the system's rules calculate the tax liability for that revenue instantly.
And it pulls the money over.
It mirrors it. The logic of the C MOS substrate says, this revenue event of $1 million cannot exist on Surface 2 without a corresponding liability event of $300,000 being created on Surface 3. It is an atomic transaction. They happen in the exact same millisecond. They are two sides of the same coin.
So wait, I literally never see that $300,000 as available to spend in my main account.
You see it, but it is topologically separated from your operating cash. It is locked on its own surface. You physically cannot spend it on office furniture because the system, the C MOS, will not validate a transaction from the tax surface to a furniture vendor. That path, that road, simply does not exist in the system's map.
So that's the finite directed graph concept the paper mentions. It's like a map of one-way streets for your money.
It's exactly that. Money can flow automatically from operating TTE2 to tax, but there is no road leading back. The only road that leads out of the tax surface is the one that goes directly to the IRS.
You know, that's actually strangely soothing. It means I can't accidentally commit tax fraud by mismanaging my cash flow.
And you can't accidentally bankrupt yourself by spending money that was never truly yours to begin with. It's enforcing financial discipline through pure geometry.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hit the other surfaces a bit quicker.
Yeah.
Surface 4, the international surface, Teen 2 days.
This one is designed to solve currency exposure risk. Usually, if your company holds a bunch of euros, you're constantly gambling on the EUR/USD exchange rate.
All right, it could go up or down.
Here, the atomic conversion happens at the boundary of the surface. You don't hold euros and hope they stay valuable against the dollar. You hold a currency-hedged position that is instantly and continuously reconciled against the primary currency of the Tesseract. It eliminates that drift.
Okay, Surface 5, the reconciliation surface, $3. This is the part that has to talk to the messy outside world, right?
This is the airlock. The Tesseract system is a clean room. The traditional banking world is dirty. The reconciliation surface is where the Tesseract constantly compares its internal perfect truth to the bank's external, often delayed truth.
And what happens when they don't match?
The paper is very, I'd say, arrogant here, in a good way. It says, external systems must conform to the Tesseract, not vice versa.
Wow, that is a power move. My ledger is the ground truth. If the bank's statement disagrees with me, the bank is wrong.
Or at the very least, if the bank disagrees, it triggers an immediate, high-priority alert. It doesn't just let the error slide for a month until someone notices. The system demands that reality conform to its model.
And that leaves us with the last one. Surface 6, the audit surface, TL letters.
This is the ground truth. This is that append-only, cryptographically signed log of everything we've just talked about. Every single state transition, every mirrored tax dollar, every single rejected transaction from Mario hitting a wall.
It's the financial equivalent of a plane's flight recorder that can perfectly survive any crash.
And can be read by anyone with the right permissions to prove exactly what happened and why.
So we have the machine, we have the architecture, but now we need to talk about the deep theory that supposedly makes it all work. And this is the part of the paper where it takes a hard left turn into pretty advanced physics. They bring up Noether.
Yes. Noether's a theorem.
Now, I have not thought about Noether since my college physics class, and even then I'm not sure I really got it. So why is a German physics theorem from 1918 in a finance white paper written in 2026?
Because it is, arguably, the most fundamental and beautiful theory about why anything in the universe stays the same. Noether proves something so profound it underpins all of modern physics. Every continuous symmetry in nature corresponds directly to a conservation law.
Okay, you're going to have to walk me through that one very slowly. Symmetry creates conservation. Give me the high school physics version first.
Sure. Let's think about a simple experiment. Let's say you bounce a ball on the floor today, and you measure how high it bounces.
Okay, it bounces to my waist.
Now, you do the exact same experiment tomorrow. Same ball, same floor, same gravity. Does it bounce to the same height?
Assuming nothing has changed, yes.
Of course. That simple observation is called time symmetry. It means the laws of physics don't change from Tuesday to Wednesday. And Noether proved that because of that symmetry, because time flows smoothly and the rules don't randomly shift, we get the law of conservation of energy.
So because the rules are stable over time, the total amount of energy in a closed system must also be stable.
Exactly. Energy isn't created or destroyed, it's just moved around. Now, what if you do the experiment here, and then you move 5 feet to your left and do it again?
Same result.
That's spatial symmetry. The laws of physics are the same here as they are over there, and that symmetry, Noether showed, leads directly to the law of conservation of momentum.
Okay, I think I'm with you on the physics. Symmetry leads to conservation. But how on earth does this apply to my checking account?
This is the brilliant leap the authors are making. They're saying, let's take Pister's law, which tells us that capital is just a man-made code, and let's apply Noether's theorem to it. If we can write that financial code correctly, if we build our system with the right kinds of symmetries, then we will get wealth conservation as a natural, unavoidable byproduct.
So you're not just hoping wealth is conserved, you're creating the conditions for it to be a law of the system. What is the symmetry in the Tesseract?
There are two big ones. The first is the topological closure we talked about, the fact that the manifold has no holes or edges. The map of where money can go is consistent and unbroken. The second, and maybe more important one, is atomic ordering. The fact that time inside the system is linear and absolute.
So because the system has time symmetry, meaning the rules for a transaction don't change based on whether the bank servers are busy or if it's a weekend, wealth cannot be lost.
Exactly. Think about the old system. The rules did change. If you tried to do a transaction on a Friday night, the rules were effectively different than on a Monday morning because of that weekend settlement gap.
The system had a broken time symmetry.
It did. And that asymmetry, that inconsistency, allowed energy, or in our case, money, to leak out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That actually makes a shocking amount of sense. So by fixing the time symmetry with the C MOS ordering, they are literally enforcing the conservation of wealth as a physical property of the system.
It's conservation by construction. It's not a policy you hope people follow. It's a derived property of the geometry of the system itself.
And this leads to what the paper calls invariance. These are the rules that simply cannot be broken.
Right. In physics, the speed of light in a vacuum is invariant. It's a constant. In the Tesseract, they define their own financial invariance.
Like what?
Things like conservation of mass, which states that the total wealth across all surfaces is constant minus authorized and logged expenditures. Or monotonicity, which says the primary treasury balance can only decrease through a permitted authorized edge on the graph.
And just to hammer the point home, these invariants are the Super Mario brick walls.
They are the absolute, unbreakable laws of this financial universe. If a hacker, or even a buggy piece of code, tries to violate monotonicity, if it tries to make the treasury balance go down without a valid signed destination address, the C MOS substrate doesn't catch the hacker. It doesn't even know it's a hacker. The transaction just bounces off the wall. The invariant holds true.
This feels like a tectonic shift in how we think about running a company or even a whole economy. Let's talk about the implications. If I'm a CFO and I convince my board to switch our company's treasury to a Tesseract system tomorrow, how does my life actually change?
The first and most immediate thing is what the paper calls zero-drift treasury. You wake up in the morning, you look at the dashboard, and you know down to the last penny exactly what your financial position is.
There's no pending, there's no estimated, there's no question mark.
None. That whole mad scramble at the end of the month, the close the books period, it's gone. The books are always closed, they're always reconciled. It's a state of continuous real-time audit.
We talked about the tax benefit, which is huge. But what about the external auditors? Does this put them out of a job?
It certainly changes their job dramatically. This is the forensic transparency piece.
Hmm.
Imagine an auditor comes into your company today. They ask, can you explain where this $50,000 payment from last April came from?
Oh, God. Yeah, you have to dig through old emails, try to find a PDF invoice, match it to a line item on a bank statement.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nightmare. It can take days or weeks.
With the audit surface, the auditor doesn't ask you. They are given read-only access to plug directly into that surface. They can see the full cryptographic chain of provenance for every single cent, tracing it all the way back to the beginning of time for your company. They can mathematically prove the history of your finances without ever asking you a single question.
It automates the audit.
It almost makes the audit redundant. Why do you need to audit a system that is physically incapable of deviating from its own rules? You don't audit the law of gravity every morning to make sure it's still working. You just trust it.
And that leads to maybe the wildest implication in the whole paper, the section on regulatory extensions. The idea that a government could stop writing rules in, ambiguous English and start writing them in pure code.
This is the idea of compliance as code. It's a huge concept. Think about something like the reserve requirement for banks. Banks are required to keep, say, 10% of their customer deposits in cash reserves.
Right. And sometimes they cheat or they just mess up the calculation.
In a Tesseract world, the Federal Reserve doesn't send out a 500-page PDF rulebook. They could, in theory, send a snippet of code, a new invariant for the banking system to adopt, it might just say. Reserve ratio equals 0.10. The bank then installs that invariant into their C MOS substrate.
And then the bank literally cannot lend out that last 10% of its reserves.
The system wouldn't let the money leave the primary treasury surface if that transaction would violate the invariant. The submit transfer button would be grayed out. The Mario wall would be there.
That is incredibly powerful and also a little bit scary, I have to admit.
It's incredibly efficient. It moves us from a world of compliance as review, where we check up on you after the fact to see if you follow the rules, to compliance as physics, where the rules themselves form the walls of the reality you are allowed to operate in.
You could apply that to almost anything. Carbon credits, right? You literally can't burn the fuel unless you have the carbon credit token already sitting on the correct surface in your C MOS.
Real estate escrow, joint ventures. The paper briefly talks about multi-organization tesseracts, where two companies could share a specific surface for a project. Neither one could cheat the other because the invariants of the contract are enforced by the code. It enables trustless cooperation.
We're definitely getting into the future here, but it feels weirdly plausible. I want to circle all the way back to where we started. We began with Pister's law, the idea that law creates capital. The Tesseract seems to be the logical conclusion of that, saying that code is the new law.
Or maybe more accurately, that code is the most perfect way to enforce law. Pister taught us that capital is a social fiction we all agree on. It's a story we tell each other, a story that's backed by the power of the state. The Tesseract is saying, let's take that story and write it in the language that is incapable of lying.
It's a fundamental shift from vigilance to topology.
That is the key phrase from the paper. We spend so much energy, so many resources, being vigilant, watching the employees, watching the bank statements, watching the spreadsheets for errors. This paper says, stop watching. Build a shape, a topology, where the bad thing you're worried about simply can't happen.
It really reminds me of the evolution of safety features in cars. We used to just tell people, drive safely.
Right. A soft enforcement policy.
And now we have cars that will literally hit the brakes for you if you get too close to the car in front.
Exactly. Drive safely is a soft rule. Automatic emergency braking is C MOS.
So if we pull all the way back, what does this mean for you, the listener? Maybe you aren't going to go out and build a corporate treasury system tomorrow, but what's the big takeaway from all this?
I think the takeaway is about the nature of truth in a digital world. Right now, your financial truth is, at best, a matter of opinion. It's a consensus agreement between you, your bank, your credit card company, and your accountant. And opinions can differ. That difference is where the drift comes from. The Tesseract proposes a world where financial truth can be a matter of physics. It can be objective, immutable, and preserved by the very structure of the system itself.
That's a heavy concept, but I love the idea of a world without drift, a world where things are just true, verifiably true.
The paper's conclusion says it best. In a closed economic manifold, wealth cannot decay. It can only be spent. And that is a powerful, powerful promise.
It really is.
Yeah.
It makes you look at your own leaky financial bucket a little differently. Maybe it really is time to stop buying duct tape and start learning geometry.
I'd say so.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. I mean, from the legal theories of Katharina Pistor and that realization that wealth is basically just a legal code.
All the way to the physics of entropy and Noether's theorem, explaining why our current systems are designed to leak.
We walked through the C MOS video game walls that prevent errors before they can even happen, and we mapped out those 6 different surfaces of the Tesseract that keep all the different kinds of money where they're supposed to be.
And we even did a little bit of advanced theoretical physics along the way.
I am still recovering from that one, to be honest. But it clicked. It really makes sense. Symmetry equals conservation. If you build the system with the right symmetries, the value stays put.
That's the ultimate lesson. The tools we use fundamentally shape the outcomes we get. If we use leaky tools like spreadsheets and batch processing and soft enforcement, we're going to get lost. It's inevitable.
But if we use closed manifolds and hard invariants, we get conservation.
It becomes the default state.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought to mull over. We usually think of getting rich as an offensive sport, right? You have to go out, you have to innovate, you have to make money. But what Pistor and the Tesseract together suggest is that staying rich is actually a defensive sport. It's all about structure.
And defense wins championships, as they say.
Exactly. So here's the question. If Pistor is right, that law is the code that creates wealth, and if the Tesseract shows us that computer code can perfectly and immutably enforce that law, are we moving toward a future where economic truth is no longer a matter of opinion or audit, but a matter of physics? A future where you don't need to trust your bank because you can simply verify the geometry of the system yourself.
A system where integrity isn't an added feature, it's just the default setting of reality.
Something to think about the next time you see a pending charge on your credit card statement and wonder where exactly your money is. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It was a pleasure. See you next time.